Hello and happy Sunday. It is August 22nd. It's 11 a.m. Central. So to everyone here joining me live, thank you so much for being here and for being a wonderful pet parent. If you are watching a replay, thank you as well for being such a wonderful pet parent to be here and to have an interest in today's topic, which is 3 things to know before you feed a commercial pet food. So I know I talk a lot about food. I am incredibly passionate about it because it can determine almost everything with us and with our pets. And when we think about what we put in is what we get out. Food is information for your cells, for your dog's cells, for your cat's cells. It's also incredibly important. So today we're talking about 3 things that you need to know before you feed a commercial pet food. So again, I want to say thank you for being here. JR is here. He says, love that dog picture. Thank you for rehanging it this morning. We put it up the other day with command strips, and it's a textured wall. That doesn't work. And I knew it didn't work because of the last house we were in, but I thought I at least had a little bit of time with it because I didn't want to put a hole in the wall until I had the furniture that's going to go around the picture to make sure it's where I want it and all the good stuff. So it didn't work. The command strips didn't work. They worked for 2 days maybe, and then or maybe 3. I don't know. Maybe it was a little bit longer. But yeah, it fell down yesterday. Fortunately, it was not damaged. But it is, I absolutely love it. I think it's gorgeous. I want a cat print just like it. I have been searching everywhere online, trying to find one like it. And yeah, I found one that is a little bit similar, but it has some more colors in it. So, and it's not the same size. So we'll see. I might get it anyway because I really like it. But and see how they go together. It does have blue in it. I heard, JR says, I heard that you'll have lower vet bills if you change their diet. Is that true? It is very possible. There are a lot of things that are factors to health. And while diet is a very, very large factor, there are also genetic factors and environmental factors. So JR is also asking if anyone else here uses or is a raw feeder. So definitely post in either the chat, or if you're watching a replay later, post in the comments and let us know. I would love to know. Who here is a raw feeder? We are, for sure. And I actually just had a client this past week who switched as well. So super excited for them. Yeah, just incredibly excited for them. So it is very possible and probable that you can lower your vet bills just by the simple fact that your pet is healthier. And the fact that kibble actually causes a lot of damage to your pet's body. So real quick, before we jump into those 3 things you need to know, I'm going to make today's session pretty quick, but if you have any questions at all, feel free to post them in the chat. If you're watching the replay, post them in the comments. I'll get notified and I can answer you. Make sure if at any point during this video you are enjoying that content, then you give it a like. It really helps my channel. And also, if you're not already subscribed, if you look down there at that subscribe button and it is red, go ahead and click it and turn it gray. Then click the bell that appears and select all notifications so YouTube can let you know anytime I upload a video, which is right now on Wednesdays, or anytime I go live, which right now is on Sundays. So, and make sure to join the pack over on Patreon. I am trying to figure out what to call it. Right now, I'm sticking with pack, although it's not very inclusive of cats. So I'm trying to figure that part out. If you have suggestions, let me know. But Patreon is incredible because I post all new and exclusive content over there. Plus, you get any content that I put up on YouTube, you get access to it early. And there's stuff that we talk about on Patreon that I don't talk about on any other social medias. So it's a really great way to join a like-minded community and, converse back and forth, get your questions answered, and just have further discussion into any topics at all, really, about your pets. Although I will say I am not a veterinarian. I always have to include that disclosure because it's really important. And the other thing to know, guys, even if you follow veterinarians online, they legally cannot give you medical advice about your pet without seeing your pet. So that's another really big thing to know about online. But let's get into 3 things to know before you feed a commercial pet food. And most of us do. And I mean, even I do. I feed a commercial pet food that is made by a small business, responsibly sourced ingredients, and it's also a frozen, fresh, raw food. So that's a pretty big distinction, but there are still questions that need to be asked. So today's topic actually comes from an interview that I watched. So you guys know how much I absolutely love talking about pet food, and I admire Dr. Karen Becker. I get so much great information from her and so many like aha moments from things that she says. And she is part of CANWI, which is the Companion Animal Nutrition and Wellness Institute. So there are other doctors involved with CANWI, including Dr. Donna Radatic, and she's actually the one who did the interview that I listened to with Nicole Hammock, who is actually a human nutritionist. That's where her education lies, but she has a huge passion for pet nutrition. Surprise, surprise, because her dog got sick. And then she started researching it more. And I know that was my story too, and that's a lot of people's stories who get really super involved and interested in pet nutrition. So, and also, by the way, if you join the Patreon pack, you get access to all of the back posts, everything that I have posted in the past, including today's post, which there are links in today's post, and also there is a Patreon bonus on today's post. So just so you are aware, there is a little bit more to the story. So selecting pet food is really interesting because it's really not that difficult of a question to answer, but getting the answer can be difficult because of how pet food companies are set up, and because they intentionally don't make it easy and don't have to make it easy. Their regulatory bodies don't require them to put a lot of information on the label. And oftentimes, even when you call them, which is the recommendation in everything we're talking about, even if you call a pet food manufacturer, they either don't or won't provide the information you're asking for. And if that's the case, then move on to the next, in my opinion. So here, according to Nicole, who we just talked about, is a nutritionist, these are the 3 main questions that she says you want to ask, and I completely agree. I actually have a few additional questions that I would add, and that is part of the Patreon bonus, so make sure you check that out. But here's the first question Nicole says that you need to be asking a pet food manufacturer before you ever decide to feed it to your pet. Okay, I was just checking in with you guys. Very first question, number 1, do you have proper food safety? I can't talk. Okay. Do you have a proper food safety culture and certification within the facility where the food is made. So I'm going to give you the 3 questions, and then we're going to talk about them a little bit more in detail. So that's the first question. Do they have a proper food safety culture and certification within the facility where the food is made? Question number 1. Question number 2, are they testing the final product to make sure it meets at least the minimum nutritional guidelines? That's question number 2. Question number 3, is the food digestible? That's a really interesting one. So now that you know the 3 questions, let's talk a little bit more in detail about what these questions actually mean. Like what information are you actually trying to garner by asking these questions? Now again, there are actually a couple more questions that I would add to the list, so definitely check out Patreon for those. But let's first talk about the first question, which is all about food safety. So food safety is so incredibly important and something most of us don't even consider. It's honestly probably because it's an assumption that there are regulations in place. Unfortunately, with pet food, that is really not the case. There are lots of regulations in place for safety for human foods, not the case for pet foods. So one of the stories that I actually like to tell when I'm talking about food safety is not my own story. Is actually Jay Kennedy from the Two Crazy Cat Ladies. She tells the story way better than I do, but as she was growing up, her father worked at a processing plant, and that processing plant processed animals for pet food. Oh, sorry. I thought my husband was talking to me. Okay. So her dad worked at a processing plant. They processed animals for pet food specifically. And this processing plant, when he would come home, he would have to take off all of his clothes, his shoes, everything outside of the house. They didn't come inside of the house. That was because of all of the toxins and all of just the nastiness that he would bring home. He didn't want that coming into the house. So first of all, that tells a story on its own. But here's the deal. He also had tons of stories about how any metal tags that were on animals, whether that was a collar or whatever it may be, plastic ear tags on cows or pigs, whatever animal they were processing, tarps, all of that was ground up with the animals, simply because it's just too time consuming and too costly to pull them out, so they were just left in. And here's the deal. This one story is not an anomaly. This is something that happens over and over and over and over again. And if you actually research and look through the FDA filings, because the FDA does do random, not very often, but random inspections of pet food manufacturing and processing plants, there are tons of reports from the FDA where they are going in and they're finding roach infestations, other pest and rodent infestations, just really, like, in general, these processing plants are, and pet food manufacturing plants, not all of them, but a lot of them are just nasty. And you would think that if they were to get reprimanded by the FDA that they would clean up. No. The sad reality is, if you continue through the research of the FDA reporting, that any follow-up that the FDA is doing, no cleanup is being done. And here's the deal. It is cheaper for these pet food manufacturers and these processing plants to pay the fine and keep going than it is to stop production and clean up. That's just the bottom line of it. And it's not, you don't just have to listen to me. Like, these stories are out there. These documents are available to find through the FDA. And those are just, again, some of the examples of what is meant by food safety. So JR says, you always have great information. Thanks. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here and wanting to learn more. for your pet. So you guys keep posting in the chat and let me know any questions that you may have. So the second question is about testing the final product to make sure it meets at least the minimum nutritional guidelines. So in the United States, the regulatory body for pet food is AAFCO, which is the Association of American Feed Control Officials. They have a set of rules and regulations for pet feed and food, but most of what is purchased is actually feed. Interestingly, since they are a private nonprofit organization, they are not required to provide what those rules and regulations are to the public. However, you can purchase them for a hefty fee. Also, interestingly, while there are nutrient guidelines that should be adhered to, they don't require nutritional analysis or digestibility studies. So you may think that the nutrition label that you see on a pack of food that shows, the percent daily value and all those things, you may think that that's a nutritional analysis. It actually is not. A nutritional label and a nutritional analysis are two different things. The nutrition label just states that the food inside the package meets minimum or maximum levels of XYZ. The nutrient analysis is actually going to break down every XYZ and tell you exactly what is in that food in that package. So those are two different things and a pretty big distinction between the two. So if you do call, and I highly recommend you do, call a pet food manufacturer asking for a nutritional analysis and they give you the pet food label, no, they know better. They are just trying to pull one over on you. So do not accept that. They are not the same thing. So let's get to the third question. And the third question is something that is incredibly interesting. I was so thrilled to see that Nicole brought it up in this interview with Dr. Radatic. So digestibility is something that I actually looked for in food before I knew there was a word for it. And I'm going to explain. So I'm that weirdo that pays very close attention to my dog and cat's poop. I'm that weirdo. And here's the thing, I don't think that's weird because it is one of the best indications of what is going on inside your pet's body. And because your pet can't speak to you in English or whatever language you speak and say, this doesn't feel right, I don't feel that great, I'm not feeling good today, whatever it may be, they can't tell you that, or I'm feeling great today. They can't tell you one way or the other. You have to be a detective. You just have to. So what I noticed was that when we moved here, and this isn't something new that I've noticed, but this is just the story that I chose to tell today. When we moved here, we didn't have a refrigerator, or like a big fridge in our kitchen because it was on back order. So we got a small little 10 cubic foot refrigerator to put out in the garage, and that's what we were using. So it has a very small freezer. So I went to the store to get food for Kim, the local natural pet store, because I feed her raw food. And I just picked up a small bag. I wanted a small bag of something because we didn't have a ton of room in the freezer, basically. And my selections here were different from where we used to live. So I had to do a little, and I called the store. Okay, I'm getting a little off track, but I called the store ahead of time before we even moved to find out what they actually carried in stock so that I could do my research and find out what foods I wanted to feed when we moved. So I knew going in what I wanted. I purchased a bag of food, and I noticed that Kim was pooping more frequently and the volume was greater. So I went back to the store and I picked up, a couple weeks later, I picked up a second bag of food, and this was a different brand of food, though I thought it was my second choice. Turns out it was my first choice based on what this particular store had available or has available. And once I started feeding her that food, her poop went back down to normal, or what I consider normal for her. So the frequency decreased and also the volume decreased. And that is, in a nutshell, a little not fairly non-scientific digestibility study. Because when you are feeding a food that is highly digestible, there's not a whole lot left over to come back out, basically. So Kim is getting, in the new food that I bought, now the first food I fed her wasn't bad, it just wasn't as digestible for her as the second food that I bought. So she's getting a lot more out of the food that we're feeding her now. And that really is what digestibility is all about. It's how much of that food you're putting in the body is actually being digested and utilized by the cells of the body. So that is really interesting, because a lot of pet companies don't do any digestibility studies. It's definitely not required. And if they were to, they would find that there isn't a whole lot of digestibility. And I know this because I have seen it with so many dogs eating kibble. They they poop 4, 5, 6 times a day, and it's big. And that is telling you that your dog is not able to digest and utilize the nutrition that you think you're putting in their body. Like it's not. There's no nutrition there. So anyway, that's my little non-scientific but very good example of a digestibility study. So those are the 3 questions, according to Nicole, the first 3 questions, in my opinion, you should be asking a pet food manufacturer before you decide to feed that food to your pet. So again, I added a couple more questions to that list, so definitely make sure you check out Patreon to find out those additional questions. I think they are incredibly important, which is why I included them. JR says, do you recommend all dogs have a raw food diet? So in general, my answer is yes. However, there may be some cases where a dog, especially if it's maybe an immunocompromised dog, might do better on a lightly cooked diet, in which case I would actually recommend you doing it yourself. And there are wonderful resources out there. I've actually provided them before, and I talk about them on an upcoming episode of the podcast. So if you are not already following or subscribed to the podcast, make sure you check it out. It still is not indexed on Apple Podcasts, but you can get it on Spotify, Google Podcasts. You can also get it on my website. It's called The Pet Parenting Reset, which is the title or the name of this channel as well. The Pet Parenting Reset is the name of the podcast. So definitely check that out. Make sure to give it a follow. There are loads of resources in an upcoming episode if you would prefer, or if your dog would do better on a lightly cooked diet. Fresh food, still a fresh food diet. Loads of resources there. And it's also not recommended for dogs undergoing chemotherapy to eat a raw food diet. Though I will say, if you follow Kimberly over at Keep the Tail Wagging, her dog that was it Rodrigo, I think. Anyway, just went through chemotherapy. He is in remission, thank goodness. She knew the risks and did a ton of research, and she continued to feed him a raw food diet. However, she did alter it a little bit. So that's kind of what you think you should do scenario. I do think there were times, especially in the beginning, where she lightly cooked some of his food. So again, any immunocompromised dog, probably no. But in general, other dogs, yes, absolutely. It is a balanced raw food diet, whether you balance every meal or you balance over time, which would be throughout the course of a week. Or if you just choose to feed a commercially available raw food diet that is balanced to meet at least minimum AFCO requirements for nutritional minimums, then yeah, overwhelmingly, the answer is yes to that question. JR, what brands are best? There are lots of wonderful brands out there who are doing raw food right. The Bones & Co. is great. Small Batch is great. Steve's Real Food is great. Primal is great. There is a new company. They're kind of new. The brand is new, but the owners are not new to the raw food pet market. It is called Kure, Kure, and it will be coming, it'll be available, I'm sure, on the East Coast before it's available on the West Coast, but I am super excited for it and hope to get it here in Central Texas. I will definitely be asking Janet over at Pupology to see if she can order it for me when it becomes available. I'm very excited for that one. JR is also asking, how often should your dog poop? So every dog is different, of course. Kim typically poops twice a day. Yeah, typically poops twice a day, and very, very, very small amounts. Very small amounts. So anytime the volume of her poop increases or the frequency of her poop increases, I know that we have maybe given her a snack that didn't agree with her, or something happened, right? Some change occurred and we need to address it, because in general, the food we feed her is highly digestible and she gets a ton of nutrition from it. She is incredibly healthy. Other than a couple of pounds, we are still working on getting off of her. So okay, it is almost 11:30. So thank you again so much for being here. Thank you for asking so many wonderful questions, JR. I really, really appreciate it. Again, the 3 things to know before you feed a commercial pet food, we talked about those, and there are actually a couple more questions that I would add to that list, which I did provide to the Patreon pack. So definitely make sure you check out Patreon. It is the first link in the description of this video, or if you go down to the second link in the description, that takes you to my link tree where you can get all the links. So you'll have the link to Patreon, you will have the link to my podcast, you will have the link to join the texting family. Yes, I don't text you guys too terribly much. I pretty much just text you to give you like a 15-minute heads up that I'm going live, and I will be texting probably a couple more months. I'm going to be doing my annual sale on my recall course. It is definitely the most popular course I have ever put out, and it only goes up for sale once a year. So I will be texting about that. But outside of that, that's pretty much all the text you get from me. I'm not blowing up your phone. JR says he learned a lot. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and I'm so glad that you did learn a lot. I hope this information was valuable, so make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn it red. No, if it's red, you're not subscribed. Then once you click it and you are subscribed, it will turn gray. That's how that works. Then a bell will appear. Click the bell and select all notifications. Thank you guys so much for being here. And if you are interested in learning how to start, run, or grow your online business, make sure to check out JR Fisher Training. He's the one that's been posting in the chat. You can click on his name here on YouTube and go to his channel. Tons and tons and tons of great videos that you can check out. And yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate you. And I will see you guys I'll see you on Wednesday because I have a published video then, and then we'll be going live again next Sunday. And I hope to welcome you as part of the pack on Patreon. So I'll see you there as well. All right, guys, have a great rest of your Sunday. Bye.